Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. Kim, the other piece of this student loan agenda from President Biden that we have wrangled with is whether he thinks it will be politically popular. And I went to the census data this morning to refresh my memory, but educational attainment in the U.S. as of 2021, 8.9% of people had less than a high school diploma, 27% were high school graduates, 14.9% had some college but no degree. And so you have 51.7%, roughly a little more than half of Americans that have no college degree at all. If you go to bachelor's degree, it's less than 24% of people, and then less than 15% have some sort of advanced degree. So Colin raised the point earlier that what ends up happening here is you have people who may have been successful, very successful in other industries. They bought a truck and then they bought two trucks and suddenly they have a huge trucking company or, a plumbing company. There are all sorts of people who are doing really well in the trades, entrepreneurs, and they end up footing the bill for these people who end up with the film degrees and get the student loan forgiveness.
Yeah, that is a huge aspect of this. And, add to this too, it's not just that a significant number of Americans don't have that kind of educational attainment level that would allow them to take benefit of this program and basically have taxpayers float them. But then add to that a large share of student debt is also owed by well-educated and largely white and pretty financially successful students from pretty well-to-do or at least upper-class families, okay? And that really is jarring, especially when you think about this administration's claims that a whole big focus of its time in office is going to be imposing an equity agenda and trying to close gaps between less and better advantaged groups. So that's also going to breed some resentment out there. And in fact, when you do some honest polling on this, a lot of Americans really don't like the idea of this, and for all kinds of reasons. One, because it isn't fair in the traditional use of that word, and that it is the taxpayer floating a bunch of people that are essentially privileged enough to go to college. And that's just classic redistribution of wealth. So there's that part of it. They don't like it because it's costly, and they don't like it because it's essentially a new government benefit, one that the Biden administration is working very, very hard to make permanent and forever. And so I don't see that this necessarily is a winner. And it's also just, I think, a lot of Americans don't like the idea that you don't have to work for things anymore. Very much this idea that Colin was expressing, that somehow you can just go and someone else will pay off your debts. Debts are meant to be debts. They are something that you sign a contract. And there is something very jarring to people about the notion that if I go sign a contract for a brand new fancy pickup truck, do I somehow now expect somebody else to pay it off for me? No. And, education shouldn't be any different in the minds of a lot of Americans. So I don't see this as a political winner. There are some Democrats who suggested that the number of younger people who turned out in the election, which was a little bit higher than some folks had expected for a midterm in particular, somehow had to do with the student loan program, maybe. But you have to balance that against a lot of other voters in older categories who do not like this idea.
That's a good point, because the polling has shown the student loan forgiveness plan, at least, to be less unpopular than I suspected it might have been. On the other hand, Colin, maybe it's one of these issues that really animates a share of people on both sides of the aisle. Obviously, the former students who are getting the loan forgiveness are probably generally in favor of that. On the other hand, every time we talk about the student forgiveness plan on the podcast, we get a pretty good amount of emails coming in from people who have paid off their loans or paid off their kids' loans, are saying, what am I doing putting all of this money into a 529 savings account for my kids in the future, when that seems to be the chump's way now of paying for college? Colin, I don't know, maybe this is one of those issues that fires up both sides and then it nets out in the middle.
Well, it does for sure. And no question, the people who have finished paying off their student loans feel really good about that. And they'll tell you that in retrospect, it felt like a really good, valuable exercise every minute that they were doing it, which probably it didn't. Probably it was really hard. But these are the kind of experiences actually that shape our lives, that shape what it means to sort of raise children and have a family and go out and prepare to sort of confront the world and its challenges. And I think that we really do take away from this generation of students who already, many people would say that they're the generation that's, coddled in so many ways. And we take away from them having these experiences of, of course they're in favor of taking away their student loans. Of course they support democratic proposals because guess what? It's scary to graduate from college and it's scary to go out and have to pay your own bills and take on adult responsibilities. And it's nice if you get to just stay on campus and have all of the luxury that's there. So I think there is a generational split there. It's a natural one, but I think the older ones who've been all the way through the process probably have the more reasonable position.
Kim, we'll give you the last word, but is there any prospect, do you suspect, of a challenge, a legal challenge to this portion of President Biden's student loan agenda? As we've said, the forgiveness plan is now going to be heard in February by the Supreme Court. The legal terms of these two pieces of his plan are different. On the other hand, the big problem for the student loan litigation seemed to have been standing. Who has an injury? Who is injured by debt forgiveness? And it does seem like the plaintiffs who have gotten to the Supreme Court have solved that problem.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I don't know if you can come up with a situation where the same types of plaintiffs are able to bring a suit challenging this piece of the puzzle. What we've had getting through has been some states who have operated their own quasi-state student loan processing organizations who argue that they will be financially harmed by debt forgiveness. You've also had some people who claimed that because they didn't qualify for certain provisions of this particular plan, that they would be harmed. You may be able to get something equivalent to that to challenge this portion of it. Again, the problem overall is people in their minds think, well, obviously, wouldn't any average taxpayer have standing to say, hey, I didn't go to school and I didn't get a college degree, so this isn't right and I have been financially injured as a result? No, unfortunately, the courts have made very clear that you can't just generally complain that somebody got something from government when you didn't. The injury has to be far more specific. But given the various complexities of this and the parameters of the program, and that some people qualify, but some people do not, there may be an opportunity for standing. People have been waiting. This was broadly announced that it was going to happen back in August when the administration announced its student loan forgiveness. But it's taken a while for them to really get out the kind of rules, the proposed rules. We're now going into a comment period. But now would probably be the moment that people begin to look at that in terms of a legal challenge.
Thank you, Kim and Colin. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Potomac Watch.